All right, hello everybody. Welcome to my second live Photoshop demo and help session. Good morning, 9:30 a.m. Today I want to take about a half an hour and talk to you about Photoshop selections. The first thing that I'm going to do, I have opened Photoshop, as you can see, and I want to make a collage today. So I'm going to select some elements, right? I'm going to open up some pictures, I'm going to select some elements out of them using different selection tools, and then I'm going to put them all together. So like I said, I've got Photoshop open here. I am going to go ahead, well, let me show you. I've got a folder here in my Apple Photos. And I want to be able to work on all of these. I want them to be able to open in Photoshop. The way that I do it is I'm going to take these photos and click on them. Actually, I'll click on one, hold down my Shift key, and click on the rest. See how they're all highlighted now? And I'm going to say image, I think. Nope. File. I have selected all, 7 of these images. I'm going to choose export and say export 7 photos. I'm going to do these as JPEG. I think the default is TIFF, which is also fine, but for our demo it's JPEG. Title keywords, export. It's going to ask me where. I'm going to make a new folder. I'll call it demo images. There we go. And I will click export to get these 7 images into this folder. Okay, export complete. Cool. Now I'm going to go in Photoshop here and say File, Open. Here's my demo images folder. And they're all kind of different names. Some are from my iPhone, some are from my Lumix camera. And I'll just, what am I going to do? I'm going to open one. That's what I'm going to do. So let me do that. Hey, hang on. I wonder why. Restart capture. There we go. Okay. Looked like my capture on my monitor wasn't going right. I've opened this file that is the moon. I snapped this from my backyard with a 200mm lens, underexposed by 3 stops if you're curious. Now remember, I have layers, right? We have layers over here on the right hand side, and I don't want to, Photoshop is non-destructive, so what I want to do is copy this layer. So I'll come up here to layer and say new layer via copy. Boop. All right, layer 1 it says. You can also do that same thing. Hang on. Edit, undo layer via copy. So we just saw me do layer, new, layer via copy. I can also click and hold on this background layer and drag it down to this square with the plus sign in it. Boop, background copy. I double click on it, I call it working. All right. And I'll go ahead and turn off my background layer. This way I've preserved my original image and it will never be touched. I can always go back. Okay, I've got the moon. I want to add something to this picture. So I'm going to go to File, let's say Open. And let's see. How about this one? I think this is the right. Yes, there's Milo, okay? This is Milo, who was my office mate here. And we're going to take Milo and put Milo in the moon, all right? So right here I've got this picture of the dog, really nice bouquet on the back, barely in focus, right? His ears are out of focus, his nose is in focus, really shallow depth of field, like we've talked about in our photography classes. And so there are a few ways to select Milo out of this image. The first thing I want you to see is I'm not going to make a new layer with this image. All I want is Milo out of this. So I click File, Open, and I open this image. So I'm using Photoshop 27.3, which I think is the latest one, which you can see the version you're using right here under Photoshop, About Photoshop. I think on a Windows computer it's under Help and About Photoshop, but on a Mac it's right here. So how do we select the dog out? Well, like I was saying, on the last year or so of Photoshop, we've had this cool Select Subject button right here in the contextual taskbar. So I click on Select Subject, and look at that. It just picked him right out of there. See our marching ants around him? Well, that's one way. I'm going to click Deselect here. We can also click on Remove Background, which is neat, because this actually creates a mask. Watch. See it. remove background. It didn't delete the background, it removed the background and created a mask for us right here. That's one way. I'll go edit, undo that, so we can look at some more stuff. Here, right, we have our, over here on the left, you'll see maybe a rectangle. These are our rectangular and elliptical and single row column marquee tools. All right, this isn't really going to work for Milo here, right? I can only draw a rectangle selection, or if I hold down the Shift key, I'll draw a square. It remains proportional if you hold the Shift key down. Elliptical, same diff, right? It's just an ellipse. If you hold down the Shift key, it'll, If you hold down the Shift key, it'll make it a circle. If you don't hold down the Shift key, you can make any kind of ellipse you want. You know, and I could build these up as little shapes and make a mask out of it and that kind of stuff, but you know, what's the point? Oh yeah, see this too. What did I just do? I'm pressing Command D to deselect. We also saw a deselect option on the screen. If I make a selection, I've just clicked and drug out this elliptical selection, and then hold down the Shift key, I'm adding to that selection. Right? Because if I come in here and don't hold the Shift key down, it deselects and draws a new selection. I can also hold the Option key, watch the cursor, turns into a minus. I can say I want less selected. Go ahead and click deselect here. Let's see, what else can we do? These here, right below, so right, it's kind of grouped. These are selection tools right here. We've got the lasso tool. Remember that if you see this little caret down the bottom right-hand corner of any of these tools, you can click and hold on it and you'll get the options for that tool. Let's start with the lasso tool. Right, with the lasso tool, I can kind of lasso things, right? I'm just kind of wrapping the selection around him. There we go. Fine, sloppy selection, I can mask that later. I'm not going to do it now. Click deselect here, or select, deselect, or Command D, or Control D. D for deselect, or doggy. Also under the lasso tool is the selection brush, and that'll allow me to kind of brush around that selection. There it is. So, you know, in the selection brush tool, they move the brush size over here, where all the other brushes, the brush size is over here. 10 pixels is too small, so I'm going to bring that brush up to 85 and down, bring the hardness down, right, that edge, the hard edge that I might get. These are just numbers I put in, see what we get. And so now I'm going to kind of, right, this is kind of like lasso in reverse. You know, I'm sort of filling in, rather than just wrapping the thing I want to select, filling in the selection here. Should have had a bigger brush, have to do less work, especially on the interior parts here. Oh, right, see the plus? This one is already set to plus. I can subtract if I want to. Now that brushed area is selected. I'll Command D to deselect that. The polygonal lasso tool draws straight lines, so they're not going to be real good for Milo here unless we want to make like a robot dog shape. K9. Well, I'm just clicking to make these points. When you join them together, it'll turn into a circle, and then we've got that selected. And finally, here in the lasso tools, we have the magnetic lasso tool, which you kind of click and hold, and it detects edges. Right, and so we don't have to be, it's like the lasso, but you can be less precious about it. And I'm just doing this to close it up so you see. There we go, I closed that selection, and this is what we get. Okay, so we looked at the marquee tools, we looked at the lasso tools, and these are, I don't know, quick selection tools. Magic wand is usually a default there. Circle, rectangle, lasso, magic wand. I'll go ahead and click deselect here. The magic wand selects a color range, and so that's why it's only doing a little bit in here, because Command 0, bring it all on screen. Command D to deselect. The magic wand tool options right here is tolerance. So the numerical tolerance around the numerical color value of that specific pixel that you are selecting with the magic wand. For example, right here, when I come down here with the magic wand and I click, I'm thinking black, right? It's this little black heart right on his little forehead. And I'm thinking, wow, it didn't really select anything at all. Because to Photoshop, I'm actually selecting one of these squares. And that square has a specific color value. And then the tolerance of that magic wand is 16 numbers around that number. Click here. So that's what's happening. If I want more things selected, I can say, what is that, 128? And I click Command 0 to see what I got. See how the tolerance increases? So that's the magic wand. It's really for color areas. And then we've got the quick selection tool, which is similar to the selection brush tool, but pickier. So quick selection tool is going to find kind of shapes around here. This one works pretty well. You see it got too much of his ear. Then you can see again, here's that brush size is way too small. Bump that up. There we go. Turned into a minus, so now it's going to deselect my stuff. I don't want that. I hold down plus. And you can change that default right up here. Normal, minus, plus. There you go. Deselect this. And besides select subject, my favorite selection tool is the object selection tool. This is pretty cool. It's calculated what is the object, what are the objects in this image. It's found this object, kind of like how select subject works, and I clicked on it. And there we go, we've got him. I want to show you this. So I clicked select object and look at the edges around his face. I'll click deselect and let's click select subject and see how that's different. Almost the same, right? We missed a whisker here. It's like an extra little ant out here. So I like select subject less than I like object select. Deselect. Object selection tool, that's what I'm going to use. Boop. Okay. Notice that, it's going to continue to kind of want to calculate that, so I might see pink blink up here and here. Oops, right? If I click again, I'll deselect it, reselect. And for the purposes of our demonstration today, this is what we're going to stick with. There are tons of other things you can do with your selections. That's just a brief introduction to these tools. Now, I want to take Milo, this selection here, and I want to put it in my moon, right, that we have here in this other tab. Right now, I've made the selection, so the easiest thing to do is to edit, copy, and edit, paste. Oops, edit, paste. It pasted a new layer. That Milo picture was way bigger than this moon picture, so we've got some sizing things to do. You see over here, layer 1, Milo, right? Always name your layers. And let's see. Oh, notice everything is turning pink again. It's because I still have this tool selected. That's okay. I'll click on the Move tool, and I press Command 0 or Control 0 on a PC. And, oh yeah, with the Move tool, I've got the transform box around it, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key again to keep everything proportional. Which for whatever reason isn't working here. It's doing the opposite on my computer. And I'm just clicking and dragging his little face down to where he'll fit in the moon. Okay, that's good. Boop. But, alas, it's too big, right? This doesn't look right. I want to put him right in it. Also, I want you to see when I selected and pasted Milo in here, look at this layer. There's nothing else there. That was a destructive copy and paste. A better method would have been to bring the entire Milo picture in here and then masked out around him. But for our purposes today, this is what we've done. So we got Milo here, and he's square. We don't want that. So here's what I'm going to do. I turned Milo's visibility off with the eyeball clicker. I'll turn this moon back on. And now I just want to make a mask. right? So that we can see Milo. I want to mask out the area for Milo to be inside of the moon, but we don't see that bottom kind of square part of that image we pasted in. What? Let's do it. It'll make sense. So I'll go click on the circle or elliptical marquee, right? And remember, we talked about how this can make different circular shapes. It's hard to kind of match it up perfectly sometimes, although I guess I'm pretty good at it. You can also hold down the Option key and it'll draw your selection from the center. And in this case, I'm going to hold the Option and the Shift key to make a perfect circle. Watch how it'll grow from the center. So that's pretty nice. You can do the same thing with the rectangular marquee tool. So there, we've made that. That's pretty good. It's not quite big enough, right? I want it to touch these edges. So I'll click on the selection modifier down here in the contextual taskbar. And I'll say expand selection. Where'd it go? I think it's popped up on my other screen here is what's happening. Yeah, there it is. So when I click expand selections, I use two screens, so it popped this up underneath the video window on the other screen. I'm going to expand that selection. Let's see what 10 pixels does. That may be too much. I'll press Command Z to go back. And I'll choose modify expand selection again. Let's try 5. That, you see over here where it turns into a little arrow. I can click and drag that selection around. I can also use the cursor keys on my keyboard to get it to line up. And actually, I made it too big, right? It's outside of the moon now. So I'll choose contract selection. Contract by 4 brings us back to like the original. And that's good enough. For our purposes today, that's good enough. So we've selected this elliptical or circular shape. And I want to make a mask. Remember that layers, selections, and masks kind of are Photoshop. That is how Photoshop works. So I want to make this circular mask. I've got the circle selection made. So I want to make a mask about the moon. I can click here for this mask tool, create mask from selection. It says right there underneath my cursor. Or I can click right here, make mask. I want you to see too, look that the Milo layer is the one that's actually active here, right? It's colored, it's got the white frame, but it's not visible. And when I add this mask, it adds it to this layer, right? It didn't add it to the layer that I was looking at, right? That I actually made the selection on. And so, what do you think is going to happen? When I turn this layer visibility on with Milo, what do you think is going to happen? Yes, we will be able to see every part that's contained within this circle, because in Photoshop masks, white reveals and black conceals. So everything that's not inside of that white circle, we will not be able to see. Let me turn it on. Ta-da! All right, let me show you. Boop. That's everything we can see on this layer. So instead of kind of this bottom part of Milo with the corners, it's like a perfect circle right there. I'll press Command 0 to bring it back up on screen. Pretty nice, right? Okay. And so, that's a layer selection mask way to kind of combine two images. I want to mention these blending modes. Well, each layer has a way that it mixes with the layers below it. And that's what blending modes are, and that's in this list right here. So normal, right, is just stick it on top. It's a collage with glue and paper. Then you have different ways that we can let the color of each, remember it's all pixels, it's a raster application, pixel based. So there are a bunch of little squares that each have a color value, and these blending modes are, doing the math on the different color values from one layer to the next and deciding how they mix. So here we have the group that generally darkens things. Here we have the group that generally lightens things. Right, it helps them mix better. Here we have the overlay group. This is more of a texture blend. This is the one, frankly, I use most often. And I just kind of scroll through, right? There's all this math stuff behind the scenes, but that doesn't do any of us any good. It's a visual medium, so I navigate by eyeballing things most times, which one looks best. right? We could go with the mystery shapes, use saturation, but I felt like I liked the soft light best. Invisible, visible. And while I have another minute or two, I'm going to come in here and go ahead and put an adjustment layer on top of this. All right. Remember that adjustment layers are the non-destructive kind of color and hue and other changes like that. Non-destructive ways to do that. So in this case, I'm going to do color and vibrance, right? It's right at the top. So now I have another layer that's non-destructive that I'm going to use to change the color of all the layers below it. So right here I have my different tools. I'll desaturate, right? And so now we've got everything is in black and white, or resaturate, everything is that orangey glow. Vibrance, kind of same deal, a little different, the saturation. Change the tint. Now the problem here is that I don't really want everything to change. I only want the Milo part to change. So I can use what's called a clipping mask to make this adjustment layer only affect the one directly below. We'll clip them together. So with this layer highlighted and the white frame around the thumbnail, I'm going to hold down the Option key and roll onto this line and see how it turns into the little arrow pointing down with the white square. Click. Then we have everything moved over, this little thing turned on. Now this adjustment layer here on the right affects only the layer that it's clipped to. So let's do something extreme. Right, you can see I just jacked up this saturation to 100 and the moon color didn't change. Now we're taking down to just black and white. And maybe for fun, I've kind of got it where I want it. We'll do a filter, maybe a soft blur, Gaussian blur. I don't know where the number is, but there you go. Blurred it a little. Now that was destructive, what I just did. That was destructive. Right, I blurred this layer, so he's blurry now. Oh, right, and I wanted to maybe add a little noise to see all this visual noise in the moon here. I'm going to see filter, noise, add noise. I don't know, 6, half of that. Uniform is all the same. Pattern, Gaussian is like a random pattern. I'll say 6%. Right, before, if you click on these little preview windows and hold, you'll see before, after, or the preview button on and off on the screen. Click OK, and there we go. Spooky. Milo in the moon. Hey, so we went through the selection tools and took one picture and another picture and put them together with masks, selections, and layers. And we did an adjustment layer and a clipping mask as well. Notice on the clipping mask, though, I haven't hidden anything, right? There's no need for me to mask anything on what's called a clipping mask. That's the name of the thing. There's no need for me to mask it because I have it clipped to this layer. It doesn't do anything to any other layer regardless. Yeah, so that's today's live help session and demo. I'll clip it up and remove any too long pauses, and I'll put it up here for all of you to refer to as you continue with your Photoshop learning. So, thanks for your attention. I will see you all soon.